Hello and welcome to Rogue Voice, conversations that inspire and connect. I'm Tiffany Cooper.
And I'm Jessica Gomez. We are heading into the holiday season now. And for many of us, like me, who have family on the East Coast, I mean, this is the time where you want to be close to your family. There traditionally is just a lot of travel going on. I think the day before Thanksgiving is usually like the busiest travel day. Tiffany, I don't know what's going to happen this year.
I know we were thinking about traveling to see my family in Kentucky, but we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
The COVID spread has really increased in Kentucky, and so we are still going to go for Christmas. But I just want to know what the safety precautions I should be taking, and is there anything that I need to know before travel? But I don't have to wonder any longer because today we are talking about air travel, how airports are being impacted by the pandemic, and what to expect if you decide to fly during the next few months. Here with us today, we have Jerry Brienza, Director of the Rogue Valley International-Medford Airport, and Jason Foster, Air Service and Business Development Manager for the Rogue Valley International-Medford Airport. Welcome both to the show. Thank you so much
for having us.
Great.
Yeah, welcome. Perfect. Jerry, I don't know if you remember, but the first time you and I met in person, I had no idea it was you. It was so embarrassing. And you're like, wait a minute, that's me you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. I want to start with you, and could you talk a little bit about your role as the director of our Rogue Valley International-Medford Airport? How long have you been in the position, and what's that like for you?
Yeah, so this is actually my 6th airport, and I've been airport director at 3 of those 6. I came here about 3 years ago as the airport director, took over a fantastic facility with great staff, and since then I've been able to bring in my own staff due to retirements. So we've built up pretty much a brand new management team out here, and we operate. We're an enterprise funded county. I'll just say that. So whatever money is generated at the airport actually stays at the airport.
Oh.
So our main goal is to never have to go back to the county and ask for any subsidies or anything. So we operate very self-sufficiently here. And we operate much like a mini city, to be quite honest with you. We have our own armed security out at the airport. We have our own fire department. We take care of most of our administrative duties here. We deal a lot with the alphabet group agencies such as the TSA, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. We deal with all those guys, the EPA. And our goal is to just basically maintain what we have as far as our certification goes, make sure we're in compliance with a slew of regulations that are imposed upon us. So one of my main goals is to keep my departments happy and keep them, give them the resources they need to make sure we're in compliance with all that. And obviously, air service is a big part of it. So I hired Jason a couple of years ago, and we talked to the airlines. He puts together a lot of the data, and we go visit the airlines and make sure that we have the air service that the community is demanding.
Wow, that's great. It sounds like too, with the mini city that you're managing, that with I guess new regulations coming down the pipes, is it hard to keep up with all the new stuff that it's changing? Seems like seasonally is changing, right? From like summer was completely different than what we're dealing with now. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it takes all of us to put our heads together. We have a think tank every Monday with our department heads to make sure we're in compliance with every department's regulations, whether it be a new compliance order for the maintenance department, or the FAA comes out with a new operations directive, or the TSA comes out with a new security directive. We're making sure we're in compliance. And of course, now in the past 6 months, with all the health advisories and everything else, we feel very comfortable that we're on top of it all. But yeah, it definitely throws a wrench into the system.
Well, Jason, I want to shift with you and ask you, can you share a little bit what you do as an air service and business development manager?
Sure, yeah. So like Jerry mentioned earlier, one of my primary roles, which I've been in this role now for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years at the end of next month. But one of my primary roles is I compile the data. I look through, passenger numbers, load factors, which is basically, number of passengers on the plane versus available seats. We look at different destinations, how they're performing, which carriers are performing best on those destinations. And then I package up anything that may be going on in the community, new businesses coming in, new attractions, amenities, things like that. So I package that in the best light that we possibly can, and we present that to the airlines and essentially show them, why we deserve new service or expanded service, and what benefit that is not only to them but to our community and then the community that we would be connecting to. So that's a big portion of my role and what I'm doing there. And then the economic or business development side of things, working with companies to relocate to the area or expand maybe their operation here at the airport or locally. So it gives me a chance to really connect with like the local chamber of tourism, destination marketing organizations, folks like that.
Yeah, like I remember when OSF was really in season, it was tons of people coming in. I mean, tourism and the actual artists coming in. So that was definitely that I noticed a big.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one.
I mean, we have the aquatic center that hopefully will get built sometime in the next, I think 2 years is the timeline. And I would imagine that that's going to be a big draw for certain types of people who want to compete, right? Because they're putting in that competition size center there. And
Absolutely.
I think there's an event center piece of that, right, Jason?
There is, yeah. So the Events and Aquatic Center, it's actually just found out it's sponsored by Rogue Credit Union. So it's got some big long acronym name that I can't pronounce yet, and I'll figure it out. But we're really looking forward to it. It's going to help bring in different types of events. There will be indoor sports. There will also be obviously the aquatics and sports that are related to that. But then there will be an events portion where people can host. There's supposed to be about 90,000 square feet of event space, I believe. So that'll be big for small conventions and things.
I know we're all excited about that. It's going to be a really big deal. We haven't had that as a resource here locally.
Right.
Jerry, you have, it sounds like a lot of experience with airports. Can you talk a little bit about how the pandemic has impacted our airport here and then sort of other regional airports?
Yeah, sure. Geez, I mean, we were doing really well in February, and then the first part of March, I mean, we were on another record-breaking pace. We've been, year over year, we've been, our employments have been up 10% until mid-March last year, when the latter part of March and April, our employments, which is people, passenger, security, they dropped 95% almost overnight.
Wow.
So, of course, passengers is what makes this airport go round, and our revenues, although they weren't exactly comparable, but our revenues took a very big hit in the 80 to 85%. So we were scrambling on what to do. So there weren't many layoffs. We did lay off only about 5% of our workforce, and through attrition, we've been able to let go of a few more jobs. So we're only about 10% down in personnel at the airport. But we weathered the storm. We did everything we could. It wasn't just us, too. You got to remember, we, as we were talking about prior to this opening up this podcast, we were talking about some of our concessionaires at the airport. They all took hits, too. Our concessionaires are things like the gift shops, the restaurants, the car rental agencies, the airlines, of course. And we, as the airport operator, did everything in our power, such as delaying payments, reducing rents, renegotiating leases. We scrambled to make sure our tenants survived this dilemma. And in the meantime, we were taking hits ourselves, and we were able to maneuver some things. But, we've weathered it pretty well. And in July, our employments really started picking up. We started seeing people returning back to the skies. As a matter of fact, as far as the Northwest goes, we actually saw the lowest drop in the number of passengers in the entire Northwest out of all the airports. So the only one that was a little higher than us was in Idaho. So we fared the storm pretty well, and now we're seeing a rise. We're still about 45% of where we were last year this time, but it's not 95%, and we're creeping up every month. So little by little, we're getting out of this mess. hopefully, you know, as things turn, as the information gets out there, the airports are a pretty safe place to be. Airlines are doing everything they can on the aircraft to make sure that people feel comfortable, feel safe, feel protected. So it's not a bad environment for people to be traveling in these days.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I guess it's just, getting the word out, like you said. And if you're in a city or a state that the pandemic is getting worse,
Yeah.
then travel is the last thing you want to do. But, you may be traveling to a place that's not. I was thinking about traveling to Hawaii or Mexico where, things are pretty under control. Do you,
Yeah.
before I ask you a question, Jason, I just want to piggyback off what you said, Jerry. What do you think is going to be, in terms of the revenue, you think increasing for the month of November and December, which I think are big holiday months?
Yeah, we're looking forward to the holidays. Jason's going to touch on that a little bit more, I know, in his presentation, but we're absolutely counting on the holidays to get us out of this. We just came back from Denver we had sit-down meetings with actually 6 airline representatives, so that was really nice. They're all showing accelerated bookings for the holiday season. They were very, very impressed with what Medford's able to do to recapture our passengers here. We've actually, one of the things that helps us is we're a pretty remote airport. We're a 4.5-hour drive from either our competitors, so either Portland or Sacramento. So people in this region, all the way from the coast in Brookings, all the way north to Roseburg and south in northern parts of California, just south of us. I mean, we are their hometown airport, so we're happy about that, and we're happy to get people back to see their families. The only thing we warn is if your family member, obviously listen to the CDC rules. If they're elderly or if they have pre-existing conditions that are susceptible, just be really careful. But if you're visiting to other healthy adults and you feel good yourself, I think air travel is extremely safe right now in this environment.
That's great. Thank you. I mean, you guys are doing such a great job. Jason, I want to ask you, how do you think remote work will impact airports' economic development strategy? And do you think business-related air travel will return to pre-COVID levels soon?
Sure, yeah. So that was a big topic at the conference we were at when our meeting with the airlines, because business travel has always been, essentially the bread and butter of most of at least the larger network carriers. They want to have their frequent flyers who are on the road. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's a benefit for our area, and we touched on this with the airlines, we have a huge percentage of small businesses. So we don't have a ton of the large major corporations. Obviously, we have our Lithia, our Dutch Bros, and our Harry and David. But a lot of those corporations that are creating, remote travel, they're not here. We have 1 to 4 person consulting firms, small tech firms like yours, Jessica, which you guys are the more personal types that like to get out and actually see your customers face to face. And you don't have the large corporate restrictions where they're saying, no, we're not going to have anybody travel. So you're being your own boss, you have the opportunity to go out and say, no, I'm going to travel and I'm going to meet my customers. So that's been a large benefit for us. And I think that those travelers, they're already starting to come back. If we in the airline industry are out meeting, I think that's a great show for the business community that, hey, we can get out there too. So.
I think that's a really good point about the small business owners and also the fact that business travelers are really consistent. You have a customer in Portland or Seattle or California and somewhere. It's really important to get out there and visit them multiple times during the year, because that's a relationship building piece. And it's, even though we are now connected by Zoom and all of this, it's still hard to kind of take someone out and just have a good time and really build that personal connection with them. Jerry, for those who are choosing to fly during the holiday season, I mean, you mentioned this a little bit, but what should they expect, and what are some of the things that they can do to stay safe?
Yeah, so, we have posted throughout the airport CDC regulations, rules, health agencies within the state, their rules and regulations. We're making announcements over loudspeakers. We're encouraging everybody to wear their masks from the moment they leave the car until they get to their destination, really, and can remove it at somebody else's house or wherever they feel safe. But the airlines are enforcing mask wearing. The airport has mask wearing requirements.
Yeah.
We have an air scrubber in the terminal that is taking particulates out of the air and circulating fresh air throughout the terminal. Our cleaning staff has upgraded the cleaning chemicals. They're definitely touching on high traffic areas several times a day. We're just concentrating on all the regulations and all the recommendations that have come out in the last several months about what to do. And, you know, it really is about as safe as we can make it. And we're constantly looking at new guidelines to make it even safer.
That's really great. I mean, I flew just recently, so I was in New York for a few weeks. So I flew in and out of our local airport here, and I thought it was a great experience. I mean, everything
Glad to hear that.
was clean, well organized, and then arriving in JFK, same thing. I mean, I feel like after doing it the one time, and now I feel much more comfortable with air travel than I did before kind of having that experience. Jason, what about international travel? Because for me and probably a lot of people, even people of family overseas, how do you get accurate information? I mean, right about now, I'm actually supposed to be in Munich right now, and I can't actually get there.
Right.
Due to their restrictions and whatnot. So where is the best source of information for people to go for finding that up to date new restrictions or anything that might be going on?
Sure. So there's a couple of places. The airline is always the best place to start if you're trying to figure out where you can actually book a ticket to. Their websites are going to have what their current destinations are, beyond obviously the 10 that we connect to here from Rogue Valley. So the other place where you can see international travel restrictions is travel.state.gov, and that's actually a direct link to the State Department's website where they are listing off anything that has to do with COVID or other restrictions on travel internationally. So those would be your best resources to find out where you can get to, how soon you can get there, and frankly what the cost is going to be. So
that's such a relief, because I was wanting to travel this year. We were thinking we want to travel to Bali and Turkey, and of course March happened and we were not traveling anywhere. But we're looking to 2021 and we're very hopeful. We know the airlines are doing such a great job, like as you guys are doing. Jerry, I want to ask you, do you expect any big changes from the airlines that service the Rogue Valley region?
Everything's pointing to the positive, believe it or not, even though we've been hit pretty hard. Even with the reduction of 95% of our passengers, we have not lost the destination that we served prior to COVID happening. So not a lot of our peers can say that in the area. So we have not lost the destination. Now we have lost frequency to certain destinations, and we have lost capacity. Whether they bring in smaller planes or less frequency, we've lost the amount of seats coming in, but we haven't lost the destination, which is a testament to what the airlines, how the airlines believe in us.
We actually did gain capacity on one of our destinations too, to Phoenix.
Oh.
Yeah, actually in the middle of it, American put in an additional flight to Phoenix, and we're starting to see airlines put in more capacity, such as Alaska Airlines just recently started service to LA. Airport, which has been suspended for 10 years or so.
I loved Alaska Airlines.
Yeah.
Every airline.
Actually, in the middle of the pandemic, Allegiant actually put in, starting June 4th, I believe it was, they put in San Diego service, which we had never had, and that was meant to be seasonal. It ended in August. We just met with them again at this conference, and they're going to see what they can do about extending the season, because they thought it went really well even during the pandemic. So.
Yeah, I would love to get to San Diego now.
Awesome to get that done. Can you explain, break this down? This is a little off, but within the topic, how airports decide or airlines decide in terms of destination direct flights? I've always wanted to go from Medford to say New York. We know that we have to go through Portland or you have to go through. How does that work in terms of you're having to catch a connecting flight versus direct flight?
Yeah, a lot of it really just has to do with their airline's yield. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's very, very, very expensive to fly an aircraft from here to New York, coast to coast, so to say. So we actually need larger catchment area. So that's why you see that kind of traffic basically in the major metropolitan areas, because they want to be able to fly that all day long. We don't quite have the passengers, even though we probably think we do, and we really don't have the passenger traffic for that yet. Our biggest goal right now is to get east of the Mississippi River, because this is not science, but you can catch so many more one-stop destinations, as Jessica and whoever's flying to the East Coast knows. Usually if you're going from a small city like Medford to a small city on the East Coast, it's 2 stops, unless you're going to a major hub over there like New York or Boston or something. But it's usually 2 stops if you're trying to get to a smaller city. If we can get an airline to fly east of the Mississippi, we can catch a lot of those smaller cities on a 1-stop.
Oh,
So that's our goal, is to get like a Chicago or something like that. That's on the other side.
Oh,
I love that.
great.
Yeah.
That was just
Awesome.
Yeah, that's our goal.
Yeah.
the gold standard. You get your gold sticker.
That's right. Our happy face.
I have a question about the middle seat, because when I flew we booked our tickets, they're not, at least on the airline that we took, which was Delta, they're not booking the middle seat. Do you, how long do you think that will persist? I mean, and also, do you feel like that is going to change? You mentioned about how many passengers and what our volume is out of the airport, right? And so when there is less available space, does that change that dynamic at all?
Yeah, or ticket price.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jessica. And to be quite honest with you, the airlines are changing their rules about how they handle that. Each one is different. Some people are blocking the middle seats, and it looks like they're going to stay that way for a little while. Some people are just doing a percentage, like we're not booking 10% of our seats or 15%. So it differs from airline to airline, and it seems to differ month to month on what their strategies are. So the more we can get a grasp on safety standards and protocols for airlines, and if the vaccines ever come out, I think that's going to be a biggie. That'll open up the seats again. It's really not in our wheelhouse to really say what they're going to do next, but everybody's just trying to kind of play it by ear and do the best that they can. And every airline, like I said, is different. You have anything to add to that?
No, that was pretty much it. I know some of them have discussed, it's been thrown out, when and how they'll lift that, just because demand is returning. And so, like Jerry mentioned, there's a finite number of airplanes, and you got a finite number of space. So how are they going to handle that? So it's just staying in touch with them and figuring out what their strategy is month to month. So
yeah, and I think also too, having passengers when you're booking your flight, knowing that you may not fly at this particular time, or maybe use a different airline based on if you could only get a middle seat. You might not feel comfortable. So even though the demand may be there, the passenger may not feel comfortable if they're not feeling well. If you're sitting next to someone who's lying, who's coughing or hacking, you can't really regulate that, right? So the only way you can regulate is just not book it. But I guess too, it also will depend if people want to sit in the middle seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's up to also the passenger. I want to ask you, have both of you been flying since April? Have you both flown anywhere lately?
Yeah, we actually both of us came back from Denver 2 nights ago.
Beyond Denver. I'm sorry. I should have said beyond Denver. Beyond.
Yeah, actually, I've been taking advantage of the slower times and the capacity, and I visited New York not too long ago to see some family. I visited Florida, Kentucky, where my wife's family's from. So I heard you mention Kentucky before.
Yes, Louisville.
Yep. So yeah, I've been getting out, and it's I hate to say it because I'm in the business, but it's really nice to get that personal service on a plane, and it's not not facing long lines right now.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah,
But
I can tell you that was one of the things that I noticed, when during that flight, was that it felt like, and I'm sure you remember, like back in the early 2000s, I mean, you could get on a flight and you might get an open row. I mean,
That's
you
right.
might not have anyone that's booked next to you.
Yeah.
And, pretty shortly, like within the next 5 years, I mean, that really went away. I think after we started to recover from the recession, I'm not sure what changed with the airlines. Maybe it was they did less flights. Maybe you can answer that, because it was just packed after that. And we were like,
I remember it well. I remember sometimes being the only person on a 737 flight. I mean, the only one going from Florida to New York or something like that. You're exactly right. But prior to airlines actually acting like business people, it was more machismo. And if there was an airline in a market, then they had to be in the market, regardless if there was passenger demand or not. So there was a lot of that going around, and jockeying, and a lot of frequency put into the market. And then there was a lot of, if you remember, back in the 80s, there were a lot of bankruptcies in the 80s and 90s of airlines. I don't know, there were probably 15, 16 major airlines back in the early 90s. Now we're down to 3 real major legacy airlines. That's not in counting like Southwest or anybody. There's only like 3 hub and spoke type airlines out there now. So all of a sudden, those 3 that are remaining said we have to act more like a business entity and stop going bankrupt every couple of years. So that's why you saw that reduction in frequency, and now it's crowded.
Yeah, you said something really interesting, and this kind of goes back to when, as a business owner, I would always be advocating for, let's get more flights, let's get a different airline. It's too expensive to get back and forth to the Bay Area. And it was tough for our folks managing the airport, because they said, well, the minute we get an airline in to provide that service, somebody comes in, undercuts them, and then they go away like pretty quickly. Within 6 months, then everybody's gone and we don't have the flight anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. And the last thing we want to do is bring in an airline and all of a sudden cannibalizes from another airline. Now one very successful airline is now just barely cutting it because another airline's in there. So we try to be cautious of that. And I know the community screams for like different airlines to come in, but we're really cautious on who we target and where we target.
Yeah.
I want to ask both of you, I'll start with you, Jason, what recent changes at the airport you're most proud of? Let's end on that. I want to hear your positive stories.
Sure, yeah. Well, we've got, you always hear that an airport is a giant construction project. So it's always ongoing. There's always something to do. One of the things that we highlighted a lot this year was our new passenger boarding bridge. And it's kind of our first step into expansion. We just developed, we're wrapping our master plan, and Jerry will probably talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But the passenger boarding bridge was awesome. We definitely were excited to get that in. It allows for future larger aircraft, more of them to be parking here. And it really sets us up nicely to prepare for when passenger demand returns and bringing in the larger aircraft. So that was a big project for us. We were pretty proud of that.
So it sounds like now, if you are flying on a larger aircraft, you have that kind of gradual, right? The equipment comes out, meets up at the door, and then you kind of walk down, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's the boarding bridge.
Yeah. Yep. I remember some of those early flights on those larger airplanes, and you kind of get out, and you're like, whoa, we're up pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're up pretty high, but it's really been phenomenal to have access to those larger planes, and because I remember just the propeller planes, it makes it also more expensive to get access to some of those major airports. I know that Portland Airport, PDX, has pretty big expansion plans. Is that going to sort of increase access for us in the Rogue Valley as well? I know that they're trying to put together like a direct flight to, I think it was either Shanghai or Hong Kong, one of those, sort of transatlantic flights.
I'll go ahead and tackle that. Yeah, the airlines are pretty reactive in putting new service into airports. So what we'll probably do, we'll wait and see what new service Portland gets, and then furthermore, we have to wait and see how the people in our region are responding to that. So the airlines have all the data. We have all the data, basically saying where people are buying tickets from what zip codes, and where they're eventually flying to, and what those connections might be. So if they're going to Shanghai, are they connecting through Seattle more often than they're connecting through Portland, or will Portland be the new? And if we have enough people going, that's when the airlines and I sit down and we talk about some sort of an agreement to bring in a new service. So, it's very reactive, very little proactivity when it comes to airline service.
Yeah, well, Jerry, you didn't share what you're most proud of in terms of change that's coming down the pipe.
Oh gosh, yeah. So there's several things. For the past year and a half, we've been working on a master plan for the airport. So this is really exciting, especially when you're a new airport manager to the system, because every 10 years it pops up. The FAA wants you to revisit your master plan. So it just so happened that 10 years came up just a couple of years after I was here. So basically, we're setting out the vision for the airport in the next 20 years. And we sit down with community members. We establish task forces. Oh, that was difficult. And we establish other committees to get together. We look at everything from planning to economic development opportunities to what we need to do with our runways and taxiway systems. We look at all of our tenants on the airfield and how we can make their lives better through expansion. So we look at everything, and we not only look at where we want to be in 20 years, we break it down. Where do we want to be in 5 years, and how do we get there? Where do we want to be in 10 years?
Well, you talk about the economic development around, which also means that maybe you will, in that 20 years, we'll have a trolley from the airport, from the hotels to the airport, right? You'll have more businesses, you'll need more.
That's right.
Traffic. And then also parking has always been, I know you've been proud of expanding that parking because there's a demand for more.
Big demand, and we're all out of a horizontal room, so we probably got to go vertical, and we're looking at a garage that's in our master plan. And like I said, it also looks at the financial feasibility of doing all these projects. So a matter of fact, we just got some exciting news the other day that after all our financial consultants looked at our parking garage and our ability to pay for it, it looks very positive. So we're looking at that in the next 10 years or so.
Oh, that's excellent. One thing I love about the airport is that it's one level, like the one in June. One level. You don't have to go to multi-layer. I'm in Minneapolis, so we have multiple layers. It's kind of nice. You just pull up, you park. You go in. It's very easy. You know where you're going, and that's really a treat. Some people don't experience that.
Yeah.
And not everyone experiences one-level airports. Truly. Truly.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Well, we're out of town, and I wish we had more time to really explore, because you guys are just phenomenal and you're doing a great job. I feel like giving you a gold star. I want to thank you, Jerry and Jason, for taking the time to talk to us today. And I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot from both of you, just as much as Jessica and I. So remember to tune in to Rogue Voice online every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and connect with us on our YouTube channel and Facebook, where we want to hear from you, and leave us a message or a comment. So tune in. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you both for.
Thank you
very much.
Appreciate it.